My name is Sanjay Palsamudram. I'm a co-investor, co-director, co-founder and CEO of 7-Ray Semiconductors. 7-Ray Semiconductors is a specialized custom design solutions company which we started over a year and a half ago. Establish a specialized and the best design services company in India, which is focused on providing custom chip solutions to customers. In a very short span, in 1.5 years, we have worked on a very diverse portfolio of projects ranging from a very tiny AI-powered IoT chip to a very large, massive scale transformer architecture, data center class AI SoC chip to address LLM workloads. It's just the beginning, and there's a lot of journey left for our company. Before we get a perspective about semiconductor industry in India, let's talk about India's economy in general. We've all heard about Viksit Bharat, Brand Bharat. In 2047, India wants to be a very developed nation and grow from an economy from being fifth today to third, second in 2047, second largest economy in the world, and grow from a population from 1.4 billion to 1.5 billion and increase the per capita almost 10x. Today it's around, maybe in 2023 it was 2600. It wants to grow to 2200 by 2047, increase the exports from 700 billion to almost 6 trillion, again 10x increase, and also increase the exports from 2.6% of global exports to almost 10% of global exports. We want to be the second largest and the largest workforce by 2047, and in the top economies, not only the largest workforce, also one of the youngest workforce across the world. Before even I get into an example, I'm going to give you a zoomed in version of how semiconductor plays a role in the world as well as in India itself, right? In 2023 alone, the world traded 1 trillion semiconductor chips. That is a tremendous number. So that's why people call semiconductor as a new oil. And if you look at the most traded products across the world, it starts with perhaps crude oil, then perhaps cars, and maybe refined petroleum. But somewhere there, third or fourth is integrated circuits. Today, I think the world is trading almost 700 billion per year of semiconductors. It's going to touch $1 trillion revenue just for semiconductors alone in the world. Now, if you zoom in into India, India is going to export, or rather import, almost $400 billion of electronic end equipment by 2030, and the semiconductor component of it is going to be $100 billion, which is perhaps around $40 billion in 2023, growing at a CAGR of 13%. So if you look at it, semiconductor is the bedrock of technology, and we are very much dependent on semiconductors no matter what we do. So this is the importance of semiconductor as a commodity itself. Now let's talk about an example how a simple silicon dioxide sand can create trillions of dollars of value to countries and people. I want to loosely call it as like the 9 M's. You need raw materials, so materials. You need equipment, so machines. You need design, which is making. You need tools, which is mechanisms. You need manufacturing, which is in the fabs. You need packaging, which we call as molding. You want testing, I loosely call it metrology. And you need to commercialize, so it's monetization. If you look at it, all these 9 M's interplay before you can make a semiconductor product, right? If I were to take a journey, let's say you order a cell phone, what really happens before you get a cell phone? It starts with silicon dioxide, which is sand, which is refined in United States, and it is taken to Japan to make polysilicon, which is another step in fabrication. and before it becomes, it's taken to Korea and it's made into wafers. Now, this is then given to a fabrication house in Taiwan. Now, before you even go manufacture, you got to design. To design, you need EDA tools. It's specialized in United States. You need an architecture which is widely known to be good in UK because of ARM technologies. You use their CPU processors. You need very highly specialized equipment to manufacture this, which comes from Netherlands and US. And you need world-class designers. 1 in 5 happen to be in India and United States. So you put all this together and you create a database which is given to a foundry house in, let's say, either in Korea or in Taiwan, primarily Taiwan. They manufacture and put all this design onto a wafer, which is diced and sent to perhaps Malaysia or Singapore or Southeast Asia, where it's diced and it's molded and put it into package. It's tested and sent back to let's say China. That's put on a board, tested as an entire system, and packaged and sent back to United States before it's shipped back to a end user. So when you order a cell phone, before you get from silicon or sand, before you see a cell phone, these are all the different stages and different countries it goes into. So this entire supply chain is highly specialized, and each country is dependent because they're counting on the other country to specialize, bring down the cost, increase the productivity, efficiency and capability of their areas of contribution to the entire semiconductor ecosystem. So it's highly interdependent, which got exposed during COVID. To ensure that there is some resiliency in this entire supply chain and interdependence, countries realized during COVID that if one country or one supply chain is broken, the entire world is critically dependent on it, especially when it comes to national security and the critical infrastructure. So countries started planning for self-reliance, at least for some critical activity. And for example, every country pretty much had something called a CHIPS Act. Okay, US invested $39 billion to ensure that they have some self-reliance on critical infrastructure. I think China invested almost $142 billion to make sure 70% of global semiconductor output can come from China by the next 5 years. India just announced a couple of years ago $10 billion equivalent, 76,000 crores of semiconductor program to support India's plan for future semiconductor growth. TSMC invested almost, I think, $15-20 billion to make sure by 2030 they can reach 1 nanometer technology. So if you look at every country, they're investing heavily into semiconductors, giving incentives and opportunities for countries to ensure that the self-reliance is achievable, especially with geopolitics and the geopolitical tensions that's ongoing. If you look at China and US, there have been tons of sanctions between the two countries, primarily to ensure that US retains prominence and dominance on cutting-edge technologies. So naturally, there is going to be heavy focus on local semiconductor development, and that is really where India also comes into picture, because today all of India's imports, semiconductor is through imports, and pretty much India will be otherwise exposed to be dependent on every other country to get semiconductors into the country. Semiconductor industry is just not about economics. Let's take an example. We have camera surveillance systems across India, from border security to schools to manufacturing units to banking systems, anywhere and everywhere. 90% of the semiconductors that go into these cameras are from China. Okay. We all saw what happened when a simple message Israel sent to certain pagers during the Gaza war. It blew up thousands of those pagers remotely, right? Who knows how much we are dependent on a third country to make these camera surveillance systems work without any leakage of data to anyone else. That is a scary thought, right? So it is very important for certain areas of products that India is currently relying on other countries to be indigenous. So there is a tremendous opportunity for indigenization of semiconductor products and semiconductor companies in India, and given the incentives the government has planned, it is a golden opportunity for India to participate in fabless semiconductor product companies, which is unfortunately not existing as many in India today. If you take China as an example, they have 3,000 plus semiconductor product companies. I can't even count 30, let alone 30. I can't even count 10 on my fingers successful semiconductor product companies in India. But $100 billion worth of semiconductors will be imported by 2030 by India. And why can't that be designed and owned and captured in India? That is the opportunity we are talking about. The venture capital ecosystem in India is mature when it comes to B2C kind of a scenario. Let's say you want to create a market platform, and the venture capital industry is willing to put hundreds of millions of dollars, even $1 billion in such a market or an application or a market or the industry segment. But when it comes to semiconductors, the ecosystem, investment ecosystem is not as knowledgeable by virtue of not being existence in India. So it's a chicken and egg problem. Okay. However, if you also look at from the government incentives perspective, while 76,000 crores has been allocated for the entire Semiconductor India program, if you look at the design linked incentive, it is capped to a company at 15 crores. To design a semiconductor chip, you need a lot more money, right? So if the government were to focus to build more semiconductor product design companies, then it would be helpful for the industry if this incentive mechanism is relooked. And even if you get 15 crores of deployment related incentives, it's capped at 30 crores for when you go to production, right? Again, that's a very small number. I understand you need a lot more money allocated for fabs because it's capex intensive. However, the semiconductor in the entire value chain, the most impact you get is through design. Almost it's estimated 50% of the semiconductor value chain is impacted by design, and it requires the least capex. So my request is for the policymakers to relook to see how to allocate more capital towards the semiconductor fabless product companies, which will help us create more indigenous products in India, which will in turn fuel the manufacturing lines that is being already planned and also support the OSAT systems. If you look at the overarching theme, you have Make in India, you have Digital India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, Viksit Bharat. They're all pointing towards the same thing. One, India should be strong, self-sufficient, and should be at the leading edge technology and innovation, right? With semiconductor being third or fourth largest traded commodity, and India pretty much completely dependent on imports for all its necessities, it is imperative for India to focus on semiconductor as an ecosystem. Within the semiconductor ecosystem, the biggest bang for the buck with the least amount of industry capital deployed, the most value you can get is in product companies, semiconductor fabless product companies. I believe with indigenization requirement, there will be many semiconductor fabless companies coming to India, and this is really where 7 Rays Semiconductors comes into picture, right? We are going to be in the midst of all this boom, and all these product companies can focus on their main key USP differentiating factor, which is algorithms or key IP. But putting the entire semiconductor chip, the entire process, 7 Rays knows how to do this well, and we want to help each of these product companies to come to us, and we'll be able to actually deliver good quality silicon to them. And as I said, the journey is just beginning, and the opportunities are immense. I've been in the technology and semiconductor industry for the last 30 years. Never have I seen this kind of optimism, not just in words, but in action in India. And I see that this entire semiconductor ecosystem is thriving, booming, and I can't wait to see in the next 5 to 10 years how India is going to manufacture many of its chips in India, own the designs for some of these products in India, and be a reckoning force, being Brand Bharat across the world in semiconductors as well. Like the way we rule the world in software industry, I can see that coming, and I'm very optimistic and looking forward to seeing that stage for Brand Bharat very soon.